Most of us are familiar with simulations from video games. You can rob banks, fly planes, conquer the world, take a tour of military duty, attempt to survive the Oregon Trail, and so on. Naturally, such simulations are way beyond the capabilities of most professors to build. There are some simulations, of course, that you can deploy in a classroom successfully. For example, the wonderful Plague Incorporated, which simulates a pandemic in which you control the behavior of various toxic organisms. But any simulation you would build on your own would be much smaller in scope. By simulation, we mean a scenario in which the learner makes choices and sees the outcome of those choices as feedback. The outcomes are based on an understanding of what happens when best practices are followed or neglected. Turn-based RPGs, role-playing games, are based on this model, as you might choose to insult, bribe, flatter, or seduce the innkeeper in a crucial moment of your quest. More modest simulations may isolate a handful of choices in a scenario and create multiple choice responses. Most simulations build on previous choices. Thus, after the public relations disaster, you would offer choices to get the company back on track. In practical terms, however, such simulations grow exponentially fat, and you quickly can't manage all the choices, so you generally have to restrict yourself to a handful of questions. For our purposes, an activity requires objective choices that the learner must make in order to be considered a simulation. Otherwise, it would be considered role-playing or problem-solving. To employ simulations in your class, construct a scenario in which learners have to make judgments based on general principles. Learners should be able to choose between a number of realistic choices, which means that you should not include ridiculous choices in your simulation. The choices must all be reasonable, even if misguided. Determine which of the choices is optimal. Many simulations will rate the choices made on a simple scale: 4 stars for best practice, 3 for reasonable choice, and so on. Imagine what the concrete ramifications of each action would be. Remember, simulations essentially tell a story. Finally, establish a mechanism for students to make choices in a simulation. Clickers are excellent tools for this. This will give you a very good sense about how your students are thinking about an issue.